Hi everyone. I thought I would post a few tips this weekend, as many of you, I'm sure, are getting ready for math finals, calculus finals, trig finals, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to post some general tips over problems that I'm sure will probably pop up on a few of your tests upcoming. So wanted to start with some basic integration tips. So for those of you in maybe a Calculus 1 class that just started integration here at the end of this semester, there will probably be one or two problems on your exams regarding this, and this is almost sure to show up. So I wanted to show you a little trick. Okay, so if you can see that, what I have written is I have x cubed minus 2x over the square root of x. I'm going to take the integral of this. Now, this is a good example of a problem where you have a fraction with more than one term on top divided by one term on the bottom. Now, so you have two terms on top, you might have three terms, four terms on the top, but it's divided by only one term. The absolute best way to approach this is to rewrite it, to simplify it so it's easier to take the integral of. You are going to separate this one big fraction into two separate fractions. So you're going to have x cubed over the square root of x, which I'm going to write as x to the 1/2. And then minus the 2x also over x to the 1/2. Okay, so the reason I do this is because now you can reduce when you're dividing an x cubed by an x to the 1/2. All you have to do is subtract the powers. That's how powers work when you're dividing variables. So we will have x to the 3 minus 1/2. 3 minus 1/2 is 2.5, right? So remember how fractions work. You got to remember all these annoying fractions, of course. But 2.5 becomes x to the 5/2 minus, that 2 is going to sit there, and you have x to the 1st over x to the 1/2. So 1 minus 1/2 just becomes 1/2. So now what you've done is you've simplified this into one variable with a power, and then minus a constant, a variable, and a power, which means you can use the basic power rule for integration. So real quick, we'll review that again. After you do the rewrite, remember this is still an integral. Okay, should probably get some parentheses in there. Then your basic rules of integration with powers, the reverse of derivatives. So when you're doing the power rule for integration, remember, you're going to add 1 to the power. So x to the 5/2 becomes x to the 5/2 plus 1. Do it on your calculator or whatever. Just understand that 5/2 plus 1 is 7/2. Now, the next step that you will always do with integration with the power rule is divide by that new power. So we added 1 to the power, divide by the new power. That's the power rule. Move on to the next term, minus 2. Now, just like derivatives with integrals, if you have a constant, it kind of just sits there for a second. If you want a better explanation of that, that'll be on another video, but the 2 just kind of sits there. You do the power rule on the variable. So again, add 1 to the power. This becomes x to the 1/2 plus 1 is 3/2. And then divide by the new power, like so. And then, of course, always remember plus c plus c plus c plus c. If you don't have bounds to plug in, which we don't here, this is going to be a plus c problem. Then the only thing left to do is algebra, simplifying, things like that. Remember, when you're dividing by a fraction, that becomes multiplication by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing by 7/2, you could write 2/7 times x to the 7/2 power minus that 2 is just going to sit there. Instead of dividing by 3/2, that becomes times 2/3 x to the 3/2 plus c. So then, of course, 2 times 2/3, you could change to minus 4/3 x to the 3/2 plus c. This is still 2/7 x to the 7/2 up front, and that would be your answer. So good luck to you. Hope this helps.